Within a single week, 2 men were shot and killed by ICE officers during vehicle stops, one in Houston, Texas, and another in Biddeford, Maine. Both vehicles were moving when officers opened fire. Neither man appears to have been the original target of the operation that brought ICE into his path, and neither encounter was recorded by an officer's body camera. The investigations are ongoing and important details remain disputed, but that is exactly why objective evidence matters. Instead, the public is being asked to rely largely on statements from the same federal agency whose officers fired the fatal shots. That is not meaningful transparency. On July 13th, ICE officers conducting an operation in Biddeford attempted to stop a vehicle driven by Johann Sebastian Duran Guerrero. He was not the person ICE had originally gone there to arrest. Federal officials said Duran Guerrero attempted to flee and created a threat to public safety. An officer fired into his moving vehicle, killing him. Officials suggested the vehicle was being used, or was about to be used, as a weapon. However, available security footage does not capture the critical moment when the officer fired. The officers were not wearing body cameras, so the clearest potential record of the encounter simply does not exist. The Maine Attorney General's Office, FBI, and Department of Homeland Security's Office of Inspector General are now investigating. Less than 1 week earlier, ICE officers conducted a traffic stop involving Lorenzo Salgado Araujo in Houston. DH claims he attempted to flee in his van and tried to strike an officer. That officer fired into the vehicle, killing him. Attorneys representing witnesses inside the van dispute that account. They say the officer was not in the van's path and that Salgado Araujo was shot through a passenger side window as the vehicle moved away. Those claims have not yet been fully tested, but once again the officers were not wearing body cameras. The Texas Rangers will now investigate following demands for a review independent of the federal agencies involved. That independence matters. The agency whose officer fired the fatal shots should not be the only institution controlling the evidence and deciding whether its own actions were justified. Law enforcement agencies have long recognized that firing into moving vehicles is extraordinarily dangerous. Bullets can strike passengers or bystanders. A wounded driver can lose control, making the vehicle even more dangerous. Whenever reasonably possible, officers should move out of the vehicle's path instead of firing into it. Yet both shootings followed the same disturbing pattern. ICE officers attempted vehicle stops. The drivers moved away. Officers said they feared the vehicles, and officers opened fire without body cameras documenting the critical moments. When the same circumstances repeatedly end in death, we must question whether the enforcement strategy itself is part of the problem. In both cases, DHS quickly released statements portraying the drivers as threats. But the men who were killed cannot respond, and the government produced no body camera footage supporting its version of events. Body cameras are not perfect, but their absence during planned, armed federal operations is indefensible. ICE agents are authorized to stop vehicles, detain people, and use deadly force. Those encounters should be recorded. A government powerful enough to conduct nationwide immigration operations is powerful enough to equip its officers with functioning cameras. Perhaps the clearest warning for Marion is where the Maine shooting occurred. Biddeford is not New York, Chicago, or Los Angeles. It is a city of approximately 22,500 residents, considerably smaller than Marion. ICE officers were nevertheless operating there, surveilling a residential location and attempting to stop a vehicle on an ordinary community street. Marion is not insulated by its size. Assuming that something like this cannot happen here is not preparation. It is denial. These operations affect more than the people ICE intends to arrest. Residents may become afraid to work, take their children to school, visit a doctor, or buy groceries. Even people with lawful status may fear racial profiling, mistaken identity, or being caught near an enforcement action. Neither man killed in these encounters appears to have been the original target. When people who were not even the intended subjects can still be endangered or killed, assurances that everyone else has nothing to worry about become far less convincing. This is not a call for panic. It is a call for preparation, awareness, and community solidarity. Verify information before sharing it, but do not dismiss reports simply because Marion is not a major city. Check on neighbors who may be afraid to leave home. Ask whether they need groceries, medication, diapers, or transportation. Help them locate legitimate legal resources. Learn how to document enforcement activities safely and lawfully without interfering. No one should place themselves in the middle of an armed confrontation, but delivering groceries, picking up prescriptions, or checking on a frightened family is not obstruction. It is what communities are supposed to do. In the end, the central question is not whether someone supports or opposes current immigration policy. The question is whether federal officers should be permitted to use deadly force during disputed encounters without recording what happened. Immigration status does not make transparency optional, and it does not require the public to accept official statements without evidence. If these shootings were justified, body camera footage could have helped demonstrate that. If they were not, that footage could have exposed it. Instead, 2 men are dead, the cameras were absent, and the public is being asked to trust accounts that cannot yet be independently confirmed. One of these shootings happened in a city smaller than Marion. These are not distant stories with no relevance to us. They are warnings. Stay informed, remain peaceful, document responsibly, help frightened families obtain necessities and legitimate legal assistance. Refuse to spread panic, but also refuse to look away. The true test of a community is not how loudly it debates national politics. It is whether its people protect one another when fear arrives on their own streets.